从前，从前有三只熊一起住在森林里，一栋属于他们自己的房子里。Once upon a time, there were 3 bears who lived together in a house of their own, in a wood. 其中一只是小熊，一只是中型熊，另一只是大巨熊。One of them was a little wee bear, and one was a middle-sized bear, and the other was a great big bear. 他们每个人都有一个装粥的碗，小型熊有一个小碗，中型熊有一个中碗，大巨熊有一个大碗。They had each a bowl for their porridge, a little bowl for the little wee bear, and a middle-sized bowl for the middle-sized bear, and a great bowl for the great big bear. 他们每个人都有一张椅子可以坐。小熊有一张小椅子，中型熊有一张中椅子，大巨熊有一张大椅子。And they had each a chair to sit in.A little chair for the little wee bear, and a middle-sized chair for the middle-sized bear, and a great chair for the great big bear. 他们每个人都有一张床可以睡。小熊有一张小床，中型熊有一张中床，大巨熊有一张大床。And they had each a bed to sleep in, a little bed for the little wee bear, and a middle-sized bed for the middle-sized bear, and a great bed for the great big bear. 有一天，在做完早餐的粥并盛进碗里后，他们趁着粥变凉时去森林里散步，这样才不会因为太早吃而烫到嘴巴，因为他们是有礼貌有家教的熊。One day, after they had made the porridge for their breakfast and poured it into their porridge bowls, they walked out into the wood while the porridge was cooling, that they might not burn their mouths by beginning too soon, for they were polite, well-brought-up bears. 当他们不在家时，一个叫金发姑娘的小女孩路过这栋房子，并朝窗户往里看。她住在森林的另一边，刚被妈妈派去办事。And while they were away, a little girl called Goldilocks, who lived at the other side of the wood, and had been sent on an errand by her mother, passed by the house, and looked in at the window.然后她从小孔偷看，因为她完全不是一个有家教的小女孩。And then she peeped in at the keyhole, for she was not at all a well-brought-up little girl. 看到屋子里没人，她便提起了插销。Then, seeing nobody in the house, she lifted the latch. 门没有锁，因为这三只熊是好熊，从不伤害任何人，也从不怀疑有人会伤害他们。The door was not fastened, because the bears were good bears, who did nobody any harm, and never suspected that anybody would harm them. 于是金发姑娘推门而入，当她看到桌上的粥时，感到非常高兴。So Goldilocks opened the door and went in.And well pleased was she when she saw the porridge on the table. 如果是一个有家教的小女孩，她会等到熊回家，那时他们或许会邀请她吃早餐，因为他们是好熊。虽然有点粗鲁，就像熊的习性一样，但他们还是非常善良且好客的。If she had been a well-brought-up little girl,She would have waited till the bears came home, and then perhaps they would have asked her to breakfast, for they were good bears, a little rough or so, as the manner of bears is, but for all that very good-natured and hospitable. 但她是个厚脸皮、无理的小女孩，所以她决定自己动手。But she was an impudent, rude little girl, and so she set about helping herself. 她先尝了大巨熊的粥，那对她来说太抗了。First, she tasted the porridge of the great big bear, and that was too hot for her. 接着，她尝了中型熊的粥，但那对她来说又太冷了。Next, she tasted the porridge of the middle-sized bear, but that was too cold for her. 然后，她去尝了小熊的粥，那既不看也不冷，刚刚好。她非常喜欢，居然把它吃光了，一点也不剩。And then she went to the porridge of the little wee bear and tasted it, and that was neither too hot nor too cold, but just right, and she liked it so well that she ate it all up, every bit. 然后金发姑娘累了，因为她刚才一直在抓蝴蝶而没去办事。她坐在大巨熊的椅子上，但那对她来说太硬了。Then Goldilocks, who was tired, for she had been catching butterflies instead of running on her errand, sat down in the chair of the great big bear, but that was too hard for her. 接着，她坐在中型熊的椅子上，但那对她来说太软了。And then she sat down in the chair of the middle-sized bear, and that was too soft for her. 但当她坐到小熊的椅子上时，那既不硬也不软，刚刚好。But when she sat down in the chair of the little wee bear, that was neither too hard nor too soft, but just right. 于是她在那里坐下，直到一地掉了出来，她整个人砰的一声跌在地上。这让她非常生气，因为她是个脾气不好的小女孩。So she seated herself in it, and there she sat till the bottom of the chair came out, and down she came, plump upon the ground. And that made her very cross, for she was a bad-tempered little girl. 现在，她决定要休息。金发姑娘上楼，进了三只熊睡觉的窝房。Now, being determined to rest, Goldilocks went upstairs into the bedchamber in which the three bears slept. 她先躺在大巨熊的床上，但床头对她来说太高了。And first she lay down upon the bed of the great big bear, but that was too high at the head for her. 接着她躺在中型熊的床上，但床位对她来说太高了。And next, she lay down upon the bed of the middle-sized bear, and that was too high at the foot for her. 然后她躺到小熊的床上，这张床无论是床头还是床尾都刚刚好。And then she lay down upon the bed of the little wee bear, and that was neither too high at the head nor at the foot, but just right. 她舒服地盖上被子，躺在那里直到沉沉睡去。So she covered herself up comfortably, and lay there till she fell fast asleep. 这时，三只熊觉得粥应该够凉，可以吃了，于是他们回家吃早餐。By this time, the three bears thought their porridge would be cool enough for them to eat it properly. So they came home to breakfast. 粗心的金发姑娘把大巨熊的汤匙留在了粥里。Now careless Goldilocks had left the spoon of the great big bear standing in his porridge. 有人动过我的粥。Somebody has been at my porridge. 大巨熊用它那巨大、粗鲁、低沉的声音说道。Said the great big bear in his great, rough, gruff voice. 然后中型熊看向他的粥，发现汤匙也插在里面。Then the middle-sized bear looked at his porridge and saw the spoon was standing in it too. 有人动过我的粥。Somebody has been at my porridge. 中型熊用它那中等大小的声音说道。Said the middle-sized bear in his middle-sized voice. 然后小熊看向他的碗，汤匙还在里面，但粥全都不见了。Then the little wee bear looked at his, and there was the spoon in the porridge bowl, but the porridge was all gone. 有人动过我的粥，还把它吃个精光。Somebody has been at my porridge and has eaten it all up. 小熊用它那细小的声音说道。Said the little wee bear in his little wee voice. 三只熊发现有人插进家里，并吃光了小熊的早餐，便开始在四周查看。Upon this, the three bears, seeing that someone had entered their house and eaten up the little wee bear's breakfast, began to look about them. 粗心的金发姑娘在从大巨熊的椅子站起来时，没有把硬垫子放正。Now the careless Goldilocks had not put the hard cushion straight when she rose from the chair of the great big bear. 有人坐过我的椅子。Somebody has been sitting in my chair. 大巨熊用它那巨大、粗鲁、低沉的声音说道。Said the great big bear in his great, rough, gruff voice. 而粗心的金发姑娘把中型熊的软垫子压扁了。And the careless Goldilocks had squatted down the soft cushion of the middle-sized bear. 有人坐过我的椅子。Somebody has been sitting in my chair. 中型熊用它那中等大小的声音说道。Said the middle-sized bear in his middle-sized voice. 有人坐过我的椅子，还把椅底踩穿了。Somebody has been sitting in my chair and has sate the bottom through. 小熊用它那细小的声音说道。Said the little wee bear in his little wee voice. 然后这三只熊觉得最好进一步搜查看看是不是有强盗。于是他们上楼进了卧房。Then the three bears thought they had better make further search in case it was a burglar. So they went upstairs into their bedchamber. 金发姑娘把大巨熊的枕头弄乱了。Now Goldilocks had pulled the pillow of the great big bear out of its place. 有人躺过我的床。Somebody has been lying in my bed. 大巨熊用它那巨大、粗鲁、低沉的声音说道。Said the great big bear in his great, rough, gruff voice. 金发姑娘也把中型熊的抱枕弄乱了。And Goldilocks had pulled the bolster of the middle-sized bear out of its place. 有人躺过我的床。Somebody has been lying in my bed. 中型熊用它那中等大小的声音说道。 said the middle-sized bear in his middle-sized voice. 但当小熊过来看他的床时，发现抱枕还在原位，枕头也在抱枕上。But when the little wee bear came to look at his bed, there was the bolster in its place, and the pillow was in its place upon the bolster. 而枕头上 and upon the pillow 出现了金发姑娘黄色的脑袋。那并不属于那里，因为它根本不该出现在那里。There was Goldilocks' yellow head, which was not in its place, for she had no business there. 有人躺过我的床，而且他还躺在这里。Somebody has been lying in my bed, and here she is still. 小熊用它那细小的声音说道。Said the little wee bear in his little wee voice. 金发姑娘在睡梦中听到了大巨熊那巨大、粗鲁、低沉的声音，但她睡得太沉了，那对她来说不过像是风吼或雷鸣。Now Goldilocks had heard in her sleep the great, rough, gruff voice of the great big bear. But she was so fast asleep that it was no more to her than the roaring of wind or the rumbling of thunder. 她也听到了中型熊那中等大小的声音，但那只像是听到有人在梦中说话。And she had heard the middle-sized voice of the middle-sized bear, but it was only as if she had heard someone speaking in a dream. 但当她听到小熊那细小、尖锐且刺耳的声音时，一下子就把她惊醒了。But when she heard the little wee voice of the little wee bear, it was so sharp and so shrill that it awakened her at once. 她猛地惊起，看见床边站着3只熊，她赶紧从床的另一边翻身下床，跑向窗户。Up she started, and when she saw the 3 bears on one side of the bed, she tumbled herself out at the other and ran to the window. 窗户开着，因为熊就像爱干净的好熊一样，早上起床时总是会打开卧室的窗户。Now the window was open, because the bears, like good, tidy bears, as they were, always opened their bedchamber window when they got up in the morning. 于是，这个淘气、受惊吓的小金发姑娘跳了下去。没人能说出她是在跌落时摔断了脖子，还是逃进森林里走丢了，或是走出了森林，并因为淘气、逃学而挨了鞭子。So naughty, frightened little Goldilocks jumped, and whether she broke her neck in the fall, or ran into the wood and was lost there, or found her way out of the wood and got whipped for being a bad girl and playing truant, no one can say. 但3只熊从此再也没见过她。But the 3 bears never saw anything more of her.